On this episode of Scots Abroad, we talk to a striker that's been lighting up Serie A since 2014. First moving to Bari, then Tavagnacco, when in 2016-17 she followed in the footsteps of Scottish World Cup winner Rose Riley by becoming Serie A's top goal scorer. Then playing in the Champions League in Fiorentiana and competing for the title up against newly formed Juventus. And we also talk about Euro 2017 and World Cup 2019 and that famous goal against Japan. This is Scots Abroad with me, John Walker, and this episode's guest, Lana Clelland. Hello and welcome to Scots Abroad, Lana Clelland. How are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm all right. So, Lana, pretty much when everything started to kick off, we won't talk too much about it because everyone's bored to tears with it, but you were just coming back from 7 months out and you'd finally just got back on the pitch to try and get a match sharpness. How has this impacted your recovery?
Tell me about it. It honestly couldn't have happened at a worse time for me personally. You're just getting your fitness back up. We'd been smashing training and then stop. So yeah, it's been difficult. Obviously, you're at a place where you need it on the pitch. You need to be running about. You need to be playing games. So having to take that step backwards and going back again to the gym and doing things in the house that isn't very easy, but you just got to take time with it. And maybe it will help me in the future knowing that I've had more recovery time. But yeah, it's just pretty annoying.
Yeah, I guess in kind of a bittersweet moment for you is when football finally returns, whenever that may be, everyone will kind of be looking for match sharpness. So you've probably overcome your injury and now you're back at square one. Everyone else has kind of came down to your level of match sharpness where you're all fighting for it now, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think as well, our season was towards the end. So you would be stopping for the summer anyway. But yeah, 100%, just being able to get back into training. I'm sure we will be back training for a couple of months even before the new season would start, just off of terms of what's happened. But yeah, like you said, just giving me those extra couple of months maybe to heal fully the injury without any difficulties. It probably is a good thing in the future, but right now I just want to play football, so it's pretty annoying.
Yeah, what was the injury?
Tore my ACL.
Right, this seems to be an injury. It seems that really occurs massively in the female game. I mean, I think I've done 3 female football interviews and you've all suffered the same injury. Is there a reason particularly that happens to women?
I mean, scientifically, I'm not going to say anything because obviously I'm not into that, but there are a lot of reports that based off of a woman's body, obviously during menstrual cycles and stuff, the way things can change within your body is massive. So I think nowadays I've actually seen a lot more stuff with the English FA of working with women and how their bodies change throughout that time to try and overcome this. So fingers crossed in the future they can sort it out. But yeah, it's a really horrible injury to have, and to know that there's so many people that have it is too much, to be fair. And
I guess also 7 months is a fairly speedy recovery then from that type of injury.
Yeah, I did it pretty fast. Actually, the recovery in Italy is known to be quicker than most countries, and I know that when I said that I would be back in 6-7 months, a lot of people back home were like, "What? Are you crazy?" But I guess just having that support and knowing that you're being treated every single day and doing the job that you are, because at the end of it, it comes down to yourself with how much work you can put in and how much, because it is all gym based and you personally and what you can do to help it. So yeah, I think I just was surrounded by good people and they helped me massively, especially the club were brilliant with me.
Yeah, so the idea of these interviews, this is a section of our Trample Bet podcast, Scots Abroad, and really it's just us talking to footballers that have kind of been brave enough to move outside the UK bubble of footballers, and it's just our kind of interest to see why people have done it and how. But these profile interviews, what we really want to do is just go through your whole career. So even growing up as a child, your playing history, and then your final move abroad, and then your Scottish international, and then we'll let you run off because I believe you've got other commitments with Fiorentina's coach, is that right?
Yeah, nice one.
So growing up, football is a massive sport in the UK, massive in Scotland. When did you start getting into kicking a ball about? Do you have any older siblings? Was it your parents' influence, or was it just something you always kind of gravitated towards?
Yeah, so going back, all I remember is having a ball at my feet from a young age. I've got an older sister, but no interest there. Mum and dad were really into football. I remember my mum used to play five-a-side as well. I used to go and watch her playing.
Right, okay.
But yeah, just my dad really. And then at school, I was always with the boys, just even if it was kicking a bottle around the playground. I just remember from a young age just wanting to play football.
Growing up, which teams did you follow, and was there any players specifically you gravitated towards? I'm just kind of interested always to see if the future players actually watched players of the position they were going to play in when they grew up.
Yeah, Glasgow Rangers team,
right, okay.
Proud about that. I mean, I remember from a young age the likes of Michael Moles, Alberts. These were the type of players that I looked at. They were the ones scoring the goals. You know what I mean? That's who I like to watch. I didn't really watch anybody in specific. Maybe the likes of Brazilian Ronaldo. When I started to get on a little bit, you realise maybe certain things that you would like in your game. But from a Rangers point of view, definitely Michael Moles, Alberts. Those were two to watch.
So, did you always play as a forward?
No. From a very young age, I was actually a right back. And then going through the age groups, I was a little bit faster, so I got put onto the wing. And I was actually on the wing for, I think, my last season in Scotland when I actually got put as a striker. I remember having that conversation with the coach, and they were missing a goal scorer, so I was a winger who scored goals, so they wanted to try me in that different position. And that's actually how I came to Italy, because of the team looking for a striker. So that's kind of where it all started.
Right, okay. So your youth teams, where did you start? When did you first join football?
So I joined the local boys team, Letham Boys Club in Perthshire. Went through a few age groups with them, and then I just remember being told, like, next year you can't play. I'm just like, what do you mean? And then my mum explained to me, like, girls can only play up until a certain age with the boys, and then they've got to go to the girls team. So there's a boys club in my area, and the chairman of the club, Ken Drummond, came looking for me. He was like, we've got a girls team, like, we want you, like, come and play. So that's kind of where it all started, and then you just like got there, and then he got me into the regional setup and stuff like that. So he was absolutely brilliant for my career.
I was listening to an interview earlier on about yourself. You said the first time you played girls football, you scored 12 goals in one game. Surely you weren't playing right back at that point.
No, so the first year that I played with Letham, it was crazy. I remember the year before, my mum was like, we need to find you a girls team. So I went and trained with them. And do you know, after the first training session, the coach went to my mum, like, don't bring her back. And my mum was like, what? And she was like, she's too good. Keep her at the boys as much as you can, because it's just going to bring her down a level here. So then obviously I went back there after a year, and we won 12-1. I scored all 12 goals, but do you know, after half time I actually stopped trying to shoot. I was just passing to try and get the other girls to score. And after the game we found out that I'd equalled a record with the most goals scored in one game, and I'd actually stopped trying to score after 12, so could have got the record, but yeah.
And then from Letham you joined St Johnstone. Is at that point, does St Johnstone's Girls Academy have any link to the actual professional team at that point?
They used to, and then something along the lines happened. They only had the women's team. They didn't affiliate to any of the younger teams. So when I was at under 13s, 15s, there was no affiliation whatsoever. We just kind of had the name. I had a couple of seasons there, and then joined Rangers.
How does the Rangers move come about? Because I'm not really like well versed in the female game and Rangers youth policy at that time. Because I've been involved around coaching with the likes of Thistle Weir, who are affiliated to Partick Thistle, but the age groups below, they're really just an affiliation. They're not really involved with the club structure. Is that at that point are Rangers involved with the main structure?
Yeah, so basically Rangers had just took on, I think it was Drumchapel back in the day. It was the first year they just took them on, and they were looking for a friendly, so they played St Johnstone. So we went through midweek to have a game, and I'd already had in my head that I'm leaving St Johnstone. I was leaving. Like the team, everybody was going their own way. It wasn't going forward. Like everybody was trying to like want to bigger and better things. So one of the coaches there had noticed me, and then afterwards it was just two and two together. They had a chat, and then I was there the following week, I think.
From speaking to Fiona Brown and Rachel Cossey, I think I've been most impressed with the actual training schedule that seems to happen at girls football. They seem to train way more than I coach. I coach under 16s, and they seem to train a lot more than the youth structures do. What is your normal week like then? When you join Rangers and sign for Rangers, what is a week like for you?
Back in the day, it was crazy. I was obviously living in Perth as well, so the travel to Murray Park, weeknights, and you're training 8 till 10. So you can imagine the time I was getting back at night. But we were there 3 nights. To start with, my first year, we were there 3 nights. And then the week after, it went to 4 nights. So you're thinking, like, under 17s, like, that's crazy amounts to be travelling. Like, fair play to my dad, driving me every single night to Murray Park. But, yeah, I remember even then, like, to go out from training maybe once a week to twice a week, to then you're joining Rangers and you're, like, 3-4 times a week. You're, like brilliant. And then, obviously, how much it's changed throughout the years and how much it's grown is just crazy, because obviously, like, I remember as well being at Spartans and you're at the gym at like 5-6 in the morning as well, like before you go to work, to then go out training at night. Like, it is just crazy. But obviously it's there because there's so many female players still working in Scotland that there kind of has to be that morning and evening option to keep training. So it's pretty hectic.
So you've worked through the academy sides. What point do you called up to the Rangers women's first team, and do you remember who the debut was against?
I remember I was just too old for the 17s, and it was just a natural press. They just moved on the older players into the team. The debut, I don't know the actual debut, but I remember one of my first games being against Celtic. Yeah, I don't know the actual debut though.
So what year would that have been in? What year would you have broken into the first team?
Oh wow. I was 15. Because I know before that you couldn't, at 14 you couldn't play. There was a rule that you had to be 15 plus. So I was 15. So that's 13, 12 years ago.
Right, okay. So 2008 you make your debut for Rangers. What is the standard of football like? Because I guess for people who listen to this podcast outside of Scotland, the massive difference between the female and the male structure, without going into too much detail, is that the two teams you would expect to be the powerhouses in Scottish football is just not the case in the English and women's game. Yep. So what is Rangers standard like, and is it really? It's still Glasgow City, Celtic, Rangers, and Spartans are probably the top 4. Yeah. Yeah.
So, like you said, they weren't the Spartans, City, and Hibs were obviously the biggest teams. I'm actually going to throw Aberdeen in there as well. They were quite a good team back in the day. Rangers were very new onto the scene, just a bit like Celtic, and I think they were just so far behind in what they thought. They maybe thought it was going to be easier than it actually was, but you had these teams that had so much experience in the league, and with the players that they had, they were all players full of experience in the national team or having won a lot of trophies, played a lot of games. Like, they maybe didn't scout the right people. They didn't maybe get the right people into the club, and I think that's maybe why they lacked behind for maybe a while. Whereas now they're on track and they know where they need to be and how much effort needs to be put into the team.
Yeah, and I guess playing for Rangers, as you said, you're a Rangers fan. Scored 21 goals your time at Rangers, and you've now explained, I guess, that you were playing wide at that point.
Yep.
What would you say was probably your biggest achievement at Rangers, and what I guess is your biggest regret from your time at Rangers?
Biggest achievement? I know in our first year that we'd won the first division, because obviously Rangers started in the first division to get put up. So we won the first division first time round to get promoted. And then in the first year, we got to the Scottish Cup final. We got beat off Hibs, but what a massive achievement. We put out Glasgow City in our first year as a women's team together. I think anybody would have looked at that being thinking, what's happening here? Maybe, like, I think the club maybe should have pushed on a lot more than what they actually did. Biggest regret? I think I would have liked to stay longer. Obviously, being a Rangers fan, like, you want to win with them, you want to win with that jersey on. But I think back then, like, the women's football was growing so much that for my personal improvement, and I needed to grow, so I needed that something different. I just needed a new challenge to help me grow and help me play and win games and try and push myself out there if I wanted to ever be involved in the national team as well. So yeah, I think it was just a gradual step that I had to take.
Is that why the move to Spartans came about then? That you felt that was maybe a stepping stone to somewhere closer?
Yeah, I was also living in Edinburgh.
Right.
I was going to college in Edinburgh, Telford, so it was just there. It was just easy. It was the right thing to do at the time.
And in a couple of seasons, I believe you said, you've already tapped on it there, your normal schedule, I believe, if I've got this right, was 5 a.m. gym, work 9 to 5 and then 2 hours training at night, 4 nights a week?
Yeah, it was. I remember there was one season in particular that I was actually having to work from Grangemouth, and I just remember that 4:30, 5 alarm in the morning to go and get my hours gym session in before I then travelled to Grangemouth, working 8:30, 9 until 5 to then get your bum back through Edinburgh. There was no time. I had to have my dinner already prepared. You're eating that, jump in the change room, get changed, and you're in for training, and you don't get back until 11 o'clock at night. You're up again. It's just continuous, and it's so tiring. And I think I look back on it, and now obviously I feel like I've got so much time on my hands, whereas before, like, you couldn't. And I also work Saturdays, so you're thinking Saturday, day off now, before you play on the Sunday. Like, I actually work Saturday mornings as well, so it was just continuous. It was so tiring. And
just to be clear, do any of the players get paid for the 4 nights a week? Is there any expense covered, or is it all out of your own pocket?
I'm not sure now, but back then it was all out of my own pocket.
So you are really just investing in yourself. You're doing something you love, and it is just on yourself to continue what you want to do.
Exactly, yeah. I know that, like, the national team put in place, like, for the gym and stuff, so we had, like, access to facilities, especially at that time in the morning. It's not like there's that many gyms open, do you know what I mean? So no, at the start of them pushing and wanting players to train more was back then, and that's what it was. It was the gym early in the morning and running sessions early in the morning. It was crazy.
So you joined Spartans in the midst of Glasgow City's absolute domination of the game. You're runners-up in your first season, but Glasgow City, as I said, just keep running away with it. Was there ever any interest from Glasgow City? Because when I look at the Scotland squad, we'd said on a previous interview with Fiona Brown and Rachel Cossey, if you look at the Scotland squad at that World Cup in 2019 in France, pretty much every player interjects with Glasgow City at some point in their career. Was that ever an option for you?
No comment.
That's perfectly fine. We're allowed that. So over your season at Spartan, you scored another handful of goals. From wide at the start, you said, then you moved to a central forward position. How does the move to, I believe it's ASD Pink at the time, but then became an affiliation with Bari, how did that interest come about?
Honestly, it was the most randomest thing. Sometimes still to this day, I don't even know how it happened, but basically just an agent from Italy had seen, I think it was like clips from YouTube. I know I'd scored like a goal from like the halfway line against Aberdeen in the Scottish Cup game, and I think he'd just seen it, and he messaged me but never got me, and then he messaged my dad.
Right, okay.
And my dad had noticed the message. I didn't even notice it, so my dad had then noticed it, and was like, this guy's trying to get in touch, like. So then I got in touch with him, and then I remember so precisely, like, he was like, right, you need to come out next week, like, you've got a trial. And I'm like, what? And my mum and dad actually went on a cruise, so they were in the middle of nowhere, and I'm trying to phone them, and they had no signal, honestly. I'm phoning my sister, I'm like, you need to help me, what can I do? So yeah, we got in contact with them, and basically then I just went out for, it was supposed to be for 3 days, and then, but it was just before Christmas, because the Scottish season had finished. So I was supposed to go out for 3 days, ended up there 2 weeks, signed, came home for Christmas, and then went back out 1st of January to start.
So you spent the second half of their season at ASD Bari, scored 10 goals in 16 games, so you were pretty much adapted to the league right away. I think from talking to a few different people playing abroad, is it the same differences, men or women's, from going to UK to continental Europe or even Australia where Ziggy Gordon now is it the same differences? Everyone seems to mention the training being slightly more tactical and definitely more technical. Is that the same experience in Italy?
Yeah, you've got it spot on. Honestly, the first thing I noticed, because obviously I went to a team that was struggling for like they were in relegation zone, and that's why they brought in a striker halfway through the season, because they wanted to try and save themselves. And I noticed that maybe the team's level as a whole wasn't the highest, but the technical ability of these girls was unbelievable. Like, some of them, they didn't even know how good they were. Like, they could, if they'd pushed themselves, they could have been even so much better, but just that natural technical ability that these girls had was just on another level. I don't think I noticed the tactical side until I went to Tavagnacco, because I think Barry being the team that they were, there maybe wasn't that tactical aspect, and that's maybe why they were struggling so much in the league. So I don't think I adapted that until my move to Tavagnacco.
How did you find the move, and what has the club done? Did the club put you up in digs? At that time, I'm assuming you didn't speak any Italian before you went there?
Yeah, exactly. So they put you up in a flat. I was with a couple of the other girls, luckily other foreign girls, so English was spoken in our apartment.
Right.
But yeah, no Italian. Ciao. That's from Google Translate. I got that. That kept me going for a couple of weeks. That's honestly the hardest thing, is going to a country that you have no idea what's going on. None. And hand gestures get you through so much, and trying to understand, but it's so difficult. And I think it's probably one of the biggest things why maybe people don't make that move to a different country. Like, Italians don't speak English. There's very little of them that speak good English. So that was my biggest battle, definitely.
Was that a professional contract that you signed for Bari?
So the actual contracts in Italy were never professional. They were never classed as professional, just based on these standards, especially back then. It's called dilettante. I have no idea what you translate that to in English. Maybe an amateur, similar. So yeah, obviously, like, you're there, you're getting paid, you're playing football. I had no job. This is what I wanted from that 5 months. I wanted to dedicate my life to football. So that's what I did, and yeah, it was absolutely enjoyable.
You said previously, I think it was an interview with There's Your Dinner. You said previously it was just a plan to go out for 6 months and you were ready to return home. What was your plan before Tavagnacco came in?
Just that, to come home. The reason that I went out, I'd not long come back from injury at Spartans. I think I'd played a month, and the season obviously ended. So you're thinking you're just getting going, and then everything stops. So when it came around, I was like, Lana, you need playing time. If you go there 5 months, get some playing time, and you come back with a new experience, a different style of football, and you'll have grown within yourself, because going to different countries is never easy. So that was the plan, to go there and then to come home. So when Tavagnacco came in, it was a kind of a shock to the system. Like, okay, this, because they were a top team. They're like, they come in for you, and maybe people don't know the name, but having played in the league, they're a top team. They come calling, you listen, because it really was a massive thing back then. So I absolutely listened to them, and obviously spent some great years there.
Yeah, so you then go from Bari, which is very, very southern Italy, to Tavagnacco, which is high in the north. I take it by this time, 6 months in, is your Italian getting better? Because I've heard you say that in Tavagnacco, really nobody speaks English.
Exactly. So two completely opposite ends of the country. I found Tavagnacco a lot more like Scotland. It rains quite a lot. Quite cold, it's right on the border of Slovenia. But yeah, like you said, I think having 6 months in Bari, the learning of listening, you're kind of starting to understand things. Even if you've not got the confidence to speak, you understand what they're saying. So I think going there, that's what I got. I could understand conversations. I could understand what the coach was saying. I could understand a lot more things. And then being there, just having the confidence to speak and to make mistakes. And to be fair, the girls were absolutely brilliant. I don't think I could have done it without them. They had the patience to help me, to speak, to not just laugh at me everything that I said that was wrong at the end of the day, because I think that's a massive thing of, they're so respectful of people that want to learn their language, so they helped massively.
Yeah, I think the greatest example of any footballer, I think, in modern days, probably Gareth Bale, as to how much your reputation can stake on what you're willing to do with the language, and that he's won what, 4 Champions Leagues in 5 years at Real Madrid since joining, and the language barrier does seem to be a massive thing for the fans. It's really bizarre. Like, no matter how well you perform on the pitch, it can really, really hinder your reputation with your home fans if you don't even make the effort. And I've now heard you take over Fiorentina's live channel. I listened for 2 minutes because I have zero Italian.
Yeah, massively. I think, like I said, the respectful thing, that's what they love. They love you're trying. And I think us as British people, the English being the number 1 language in the world, we do it far too easy. If you go on holiday to Spain, you expect them to speak English, and you're like, you're in my country. Do you know what I mean? I think that's why they're so respectful about the situation. And I know I've had a few foreign players in different teams now in Italy and the difference between the connection that players have, maybe with myself compared to one who doesn't even want to try, is massive. And I think it just shows, like, and I wouldn't have wanted to do it any other way. I don't think I could have stayed this long having not known the language.
Yeah. So Bari, I believe attendances at Bari were roughly, the stadium held 600. I don't know the attendances, but Tavagnacco is a bigger stadium then again. What did you find the attendances to be like when you were playing at Tavagnacco, for example? Because I've been to a lot of women's football from the national side, not so much at the league sides or the league clubs. The attendances at even at the nationals maybe 5 years ago, where it did feel like it was mainly friends and family that were still attending. And I feel like that's the same in the game in Scotland. In Italy, is there more an affiliation with there's actual fans going to the games?
This is the biggest thing that I noticed straight away. Even from Bari, I went from Spartans, where it's literally mums and dads and friends. You're talking 50 maximum people that were at games watching, right, to Bari, who were in a relegation battle, and there was 300, 400, 500 people coming, banners, the hot blow horns, and crazy. Even my mum and dad, when they came out, they were like, "What is this? Like, is there a man's game on before, or like?" No idea. It's crazy. And then obviously, like you said, going to Tavagnacco, it was even bigger again, and they had such a big following. And Tavagnacco was actually a really small place in Udine, so to have the fan base they had in such a small area was just incredible. And even now, like in Fiorentina, the fans follow you everywhere. They've been to London for the Champions League, they've been to Denmark, they go up north, down south, any game they're there, any training, they come and watch training. It's unbelievable. I don't even have words for it, but I think that's what's missing in Scotland. It's maybe growing now, is the actual fan base. It's not family or friends. It's now growing that other people want to watch games. So I think it's in the right road.
Yeah, and the main thing I've noticed from looking at the time in Tavagnacco, he's always finished roughly 4th or 5th in the league, but in 2016-17 is probably your greatest personal accolade to date. I feel pretty certain in saying that. You were awarded the Golden Boot in the Women's Serie A. You're only the 4th foreigner to do that, is that correct?
Yep, correct.
How did that feel?
Unbelievable. I think, like, halfway through the season, like, I was running away with it. And everybody was like, "Lana, like, you're actually going to win this." And I'm like, okay. And then I think I went 5 games without scoring, and everybody was just catching up with me, and I'm like, "Oh no, like, what's happening? There's nothing worse than a striker that can't score. They get that block." Do you know what I mean? So towards the end of the season, there was 5 games to go, and one of the games I scored a hat trick. Next game, I scored a hat trick. Third game, I scored 3 hat tricks in a row, and I don't know how I did it, but I did it. So it went down to the last game of the season, and I was on par with one of my now teammates. So their game actually kicked off later than us. So we'd finished our game, and I think I scored 2 that game, and their game's still going on. So nobody knows if this game's still going on, if it's finished, if she scored, if she's not. So it was absolutely crazy. But yeah, like you said, massive proud moment for myself, especially obviously then the Rose Riley comes out that you've been put in the same sentence as her. So an absolute honour with what she's achieved here. So yeah, massively proud for that.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't for some reason know the Rose Riley, there's an interview with a Scottish podcaster called Sean McDonald, Blennard. He does an episode with her. There's also a BBC iPlayer documentary. It's the most bizarre story in the world, but it's a Scottish player that went out to Italy to play. But the last season at Tavagnacco, when did you become aware that the Fiorentina interest was there? Because I know there was a very weird end to that season where I believe yourselves and Fiorentina finished level on points, but Brescia couldn't compete in the Champions League because Milan had bought their spot in the Women's League.
Just sounds like Italian football, does it not? Yeah, so Fiorentina had been interested in a couple of seasons before. Literally from my first season from Tavagnacco, there was interest, but nah, like I wanted to grow. I wasn't ready for that sort of move. Then obviously the men's team became involved and they grew, and then obviously they won the league for the first time, and they actually won it against Tavagnacco in the men's stadium in Fiorentina. So seeing all this, it was massive. But then yet again, I was still there at Tavagnacco, and I was happy with how things were progressing. And yeah, then they came in again at the end of that season. Chats were ongoing after the season. I go away with the national team and I'm like, right, I'll think about it, like decide after the national team. You get a call from Tavagnacco, you're like, you need to come back. And I'm like, what? Like, I took all my stuff home, like I was ready to leave. I'd already told them I was leaving, just hadn't decided where I was going. You need to come back and play. I'm like, what? So basically, yeah, Milan took over Brescia, so they weren't allowed to compete in the Champions League, and we were drawn exactly on points, exactly on everything. It was all equal. You have to play again. So I had to play against Fiorentina, had known that there was a possibility I could have gone there. So absolute crazy ending to how it ended, but yeah, I'm happy with the decision that I made in the end.
Was there ever any thoughts about not staying in Italy, or were Fiorentina really, once that game had been finished and the interest was there, was it really a case of I've got a chance to play in the Champions League now?
I think, like, I'd told Tavagnacco that I would be leaving, but I hadn't made up my mind where I was going. There was options from all over, and also back home in England, there was all options there. But I just felt that I'd been such a big part of the growth of women's football in Italy that it was really going somewhere. It had grown so much in the 5 years that I wasn't ready to leave. There's just so much more to come that I really want to be a part of. So yeah, like you said, when Fiorentina came in, it's jam-packed it, and here I am.
So you've went from going through Bari to Tavagnacco, because I think Bari finished just outside relegation zone when you were there, and then Tavagnacco were roughly a third, fourth, fifth place side in that league, and then you've went to Fiorentina, had won the title, they won the title a couple of years before. Do you notice a difference in the training as you go through these teams, or is Italian football very much similar, just with maybe an improvement in the technical players that you have around you, or is the coaching better at the higher up you go in the league?
No, the coaching's definitely better. Everything, the surroundings, obviously the players you play with, the higher up you go, the better they are. Just being surrounded by Italian national team players, like at Tavagnacco, it was more the experienced players who'd had so much experience in the national team, but maybe they'd stopped. So they were controlling that experience within the league. Then going to Fiorentina, where there's current national team players, I think that was the massive jump. Like knowing, okay, that's where it was, to this is where it is now, and then to where it's going, because obviously then you've got all the great youth players that they bring in from a young age as well. So yeah, the coaching for one, the lifestyle, like training then being at 2 PM instead of later on in the evening. Just loads of little things that improve as you go on, and obviously like to where women's football is now is amazing.
Is when you join Fiorentina, is that now considered professional football? No,
so there's been so many changes, but the actual legal professional has to go through government. So that's where it is now, it's at government. So after the World Cup, with obviously Italy doing so well, it's really been pushed now. It's been pushed by so many levels that they're classed as the same as the men, but the detail in the contract doesn't say professional. So that brings down so many things, even though they're comparing on the same level with Sky Sports, with the federation, with everything's in line with the men, apart from this little detail in the contract that says professional.
So it moved to Fiorentina, hit the ground running. You won the Supercoppa Italian, which is I guess the curtain raiser of the league.
Yep.
How did that feel to be in Italy and finally get your hands on a trophy?
Unbelievable. So many emotions. Not just my first trophy in Italy, but my first major trophy as like from a first team point of view. Happy. Like I think having been a part of like the league for so long, to see what it has, to finally have your hands on a cup, especially knowing that this team had been put together to win things, it was the best start that I could have had, and obviously having the assist of the winning goal was pretty special as well.
and then that season was really unlucky that season. So you got to the Coppa Italia final.
Yep.
What do you remember of the build up to that final, and where was that final held?
I think it was in Parma. Massive build up. The full season it had been Fiorentina Juventus. So to be playing them in the cup final, knowing that the league they'd just got their hands on, was pretty hard to take. So obviously we wanted to win that. It just wasn't to be on the day. We just didn't turn up at all. I don't know if pressure got to us or what. But yeah, it was pretty disappointing end to the season.
Is there something specifically you've noticed in the last 6 years that the Italian coaching, so whether it be tactical or technical, that's had a massive change to your game. I remember Enia Luco done a podcast with Graham Hunter, and she was talking about joining Juventus at the age of, I think she was 28 at the time, so she's considered herself to be a seasoned pro that had seen everything. And on her first day in training, she was pulled up for the way she was taking control of a ball. And she just had said that she'd never experienced anyone with that in-depth of knowledge, whereby they were pointing out how if they took the ball on the outside of their foot, they could explode quicker with the ball. It is the little bits like that are coming out that we're not seeing even back in the UK at the top level.
I think this is a thing, like, it goes back to even the best players in the league have an unbelievable technical ability that I've never seen, and it's obviously something that they're taught from a very young age. Now, I think the last 2 years as my technical ability has come on so much. This coach, it's one of his biggest focuses, and just like even a stupid little thing maybe to us that we don't learn is even just like keepy-ups, and it seems so simple, but the touch of it inside your foot, like we actually have drills in training that it's like constant. But so you'll do like a technical drill where it's like you're in twos and you've only got like so many touches and you're only able to use it inside of your foot. Whereas in Scotland, you've got knees coming out, you've got thighs, you've got head, you've got chest. Like, no, like you'll get done. Like you're doing press ups if you don't, and that's how it comes on. And obviously, like that's brought into them from a young age. And Fiorentina, there's always been a lot of foreign players come in, and it's the biggest thing that you notice. So of me now, with the people who have come in this year, are experiencing what I experienced last year, and they're struggling. Even if they're great players with amazing experience, they're struggling to do keepy-ups because of the way he wants it and the way it needs to be done is not what we get taught. And that's not just the UK, that's all around the world. Yeah. Like,
so your first season at Fiorentina, one of the main reasons you've joined them is the Champions League. What do you remember? I mean, it took me a long time to find these goals. What do you remember your first goals in the Champions League?
I remember being in a very cold Denmark. It was a freezing night, yeah, like obviously it was the second leg. The first leg we played at home, and we were up. I think it was 2-0. We were up, and just being buzzing. There was just a real sense of, maybe the first game there was all the emotion of you're finally playing Champions League, to the second game just go out and enjoy it. And after the first one went in, I was just more relaxed. I was happy and just buzzing, really, honestly. Like from a little girl, I've always wanted to play Champions League, and then to have passed so many different teams where it was never a possibility, to then become a Fiorentina player and be able to do that and score was brilliant.
Yeah, the defender had an absolute howler for that first goal. But the second goal was very similar, but it was a really good ball over the top. But I do remember Fiona Brown saying that was one of the real highlights, was when she was breaking through, was the first time she stood on the pitch waiting and the Champions League music came on.
Yeah.
So I guess that's just really the continued motivation for Fiorentina and yourself, is to try and get your hands on that Champions League trophy in the future.
That would be amazing. I think as well, like, I think we're from a generation where we've dreamed of so much but didn't know it was possible, to now being able to play in the Champions League, to score in the Champions League. And I think when we were younger, like maybe our friends that were boys, like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, and we couldn't say that because it was never possible. Whereas now you're actually doing it. I think it just adds extra emotion.
Yeah, I think I had said to you, but we were going to try and veer away as much as possible from talking about the differences in the men and women's game, because to be honest, there's 1,000 different interviews where you can pick that up on. But I think if you do look at the leagues throughout Europe now, whereby the affiliations are coming direct from clubs. So if I look back to when you joined Bari, if I look at that league table, I think there's maybe a handful of teams that I recognise. I think Atalanta were one of them, Bari was another, Verona was another. And then if you look at the league now, there's Roma, Juventus, Fiorentina, Inter Milan, AC Milan, Atalanta. It now does mirror, and it's the same in Scotland. Now that Rangers and Celtic are actually taking it as seriously as they probably should have, whilst Glasgow City was being so dominant. And then if I believe there was a game before you went to the World Cup that Fiorentina played Juventus in front of 39,000.
Yeah, I think you've got spot on everything you just said. Like, when I first came, obviously that's the first thing, like growing up, you're AC Milan. Inter Milan. Those are the teams. So you look at the league table and you're like, Brescia. Even though they're a massive team, who's Brescia? And they were the one in the league. So we played at the Allianz Stadium just before the World Cup, and there was work. Just knowing that you're going to be playing at that stadium's special in itself. Do you know what I mean? Like, then to know that it's sold out. We're like, nah, like it can't be sold out. And then to walk out on that pitch and literally have 39,000 people screaming, it was like there was a men's team playing. It was unbelievable.
I think it's important to remember this. That's the only reason I mentioned the teams that were there at the start, because I do feel like very quickly we're going to move into a situation whereby a lot of people follow the women's game and they will forget teams that have gone before them, because I do feel like Glasgow City, obviously there's been a big block to this season now. I do feel like a lot was expected of Rangers and Celtic, and I did feel like there was a risk of people coming into the league and forgetting that there were teams there that kind of moulded it, like you said, Hibs, Aberdeen, Spartans, Glasgow City. And I think it is really important to remember that those were kind of the people that were putting it seriously long before Rangers and Celtic, who obviously can put money into it because there's a flow of income from their other teams and their other various means of sponsorships. My biggest question, and I think we've touched on it a little bit, that I ask all my guests that are doing this: why do you think so few Scottish players do move abroad? And do you think if a young Lana Clelland at 18, 19 now was in Scotland and seeing Rangers, Celtic going professional, Hearts going semi-pro, Glasgow City discussing whether or not they now had to take that leap, that you maybe wouldn't have went abroad?
I think it's a good question. I think I know I did it because I had to.
Yeah.
That's plain and simple. Like, I think if it was on my doorstep that I could not have to work and I could focus fully on football, maybe I wouldn't have. But honestly, now knowing what I know, that what you can earn, but not on a money point of view, on a personal point of view, the things that I've learned about myself, about others, about living in a different culture, I don't think I would change now knowing that. So I think it's important that all these young kids coming through know that, okay, great, there's an opportunity there for you in Scotland, but you don't have to move away from your family. But think about the opportunities that are out with Scotland. Think about not just playing in a different country, but the values of life that come with living in a different country, because at the end of the day, it's not just football, it's finding different cultures and being able to live a different sort of life that is completely different to back in Scotland.
Yeah, I just think personally it's always something that's interested me, like in a day-to-day life working abroad, and it's the players I see. There's so much more to learn when you look back at successful Scotland side years ago, even the France 90 World Cup. You had John Collins, who had been over to Monaco. You're bringing something different back to a national side if more of your players are willing to go experience different cultures. Ryan Gauld consistently said that he's a much better technical footballer now than he ever would have become if he'd stayed in Scotland. So I think it's something that people should do. The one thing for me is, if you were talking to a young Scottish footballer, 17, 18, that had the option to, is there any advice you would give, whether it be, you have said, picking up the language is key, but is there anything else, just little things like when you moved, was there anything you could have tried to do differently to settle in quicker? Would you have moved a friend, or have tried to move a family or friend member over for a while to try and adapt?
I think maybe at the start I'd jump into something that I maybe didn't know what I was doing, in the sense of you're literally going somewhere. As a young kid, I was always away from my mum and dad. From a young age, I moved away to play football, to go to college, to do these things and to try and better myself. So just knowing that you can, like, to be okay with missing back home, to be okay with feeling sad and feeling down sometimes because you're absolutely out of your depth. Like, it's okay and it does get better. Like, I know the numerous conversations I had with my mum, like, what am I doing? Why have I done this? Why have I done this? And I think that must be hard for a parent as well, knowing that your kid's struggling and they're on the other side of the world. Like
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think just being able to speak to people and being able to open up and say, like, okay, I did this because I want to do this, but it's hard. It's not easy. Yeah, I guess just speaking and being open with your family, I think, is probably one of the massive things.
Yeah, and I guess for us, a big reason as to why you qualify for this is you are a Scotland international player. So we now want to talk a bit about your Scotland career. pretty much from the moment that you became a fully fledged international. You played Cameroon and Aberdeen on your debut. You came on, I think, for the last 20-25 minutes. How much notice do you get that you're getting called up for the national team in the women's game? And what then happens? So what is the process? Have you been alerted at that point?
Yeah, so back then there was quite a lot of notice. I think we get maybe less notice now than what we did back in the day. They basically just called up the club, and then I got a phone call from my coach saying, like, you've been picked, or you're going to play in this friendly game. Nerves, I think, was probably the biggest thing. The group of players you're going into, they're full of experience. They've played qualifiers, they've done this, they've done that throughout their career. So knowing that you're going to be a part of that, like, I think I was 17, 18, like, scared, like a whole different world. That obviously from a little girl, like, you're like, okay, there's a Scotland national team, like, you could be that one day. So knowing that it's becoming reality, maybe is just full of nerves.
Yeah, and even in your integration into the Scotland side, you didn't have to wait too long for your first goal. Your first goal was against Serbia in a friendly match in 2013. Now, this is where you can fabricate whatever goal you want here, because we can't find this goal anywhere. Do you remember it?
Yeah, I remember I got put on quite late on, and they'd scored, and nobody expected them to score. So we find ourselves 1-0 down, I think. And then somebody just played a through, but I can't even remember who played the through ball. I'm not even going to throw names out there because I couldn't tell you who it was. It's too long ago. But I just remember a defender coming across me, and I just put it to the other side of the goalkeeper. Too long ago to give you actual specifics, but
I know. I've tried. I've tried every newspaper clipping, Wikipedia. The SFA normally have a really good profile for each player with all their goals, but it does seem to be anything that predates 2014 is really tricky to get footage of. You were in and out the national side over the next 4 years, I guess. Do you remember much of the build-up to Euro 2017? So Scotland's first qualification for a major tournament for the women's team, and to be honest, first qualification for anyone in 19 years.
God, that seems so long ago now. I think back then it was kind of a qualification. It was always a qualification because we never seemed to get there. So yeah, memories of the actual qualification are only really towards the end when this is becoming reality. Like we could qualify here. I think in the moment that we qualified, it was just unbelievable. Like, finally, Scotland is going to a major tournament, and proud, I guess, just to be a part of that.
Yeah, so you were in the squad that beat Iceland to actually qualify for the Euros. This is kind of touching back on one of the things that I like to think about with moving abroad. So you were in and around this squad consistently. In 2016-17, you were the top scorer in Serie A. So you were one of the most prolific goal scorers in European football. Do you think, in a way, that, see, being in Italy, I know with YouTube and the way the internet is, that Italy's not that far away, you can watch clips as much as you want, but do you not feel that there is sometimes a reluctance whereby if you're outside the UK, you're maybe not viewed? Because Scotland at this point had Caroline Weir and Jane Ross, who were playing at City and Liverpool, so you could watch as many of their games, and they were scoring goals regularly as well. But do you feel that maybe being out in Italy, it was easy to maybe forget what you were bringing when you joined up at a national level, because everyone else maybe knows of all the girls that have achieved at Glasgow City, all the English Premier League women? Do you think sometimes you're maybe at the back end of that?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, I think so. Videos were always there, but whether they were watched or not, I couldn't tell you. I think the thing that I brought, obviously, I was still being selected, so something they're seeing. They're seeing something in me to bring me to camp. So obviously, then they're seeing me in the camp. So whether that was enough for them or whether it wasn't, honestly, I couldn't tell you. But I just know that having been in Italy, I grew so much more than what I would have if I'd stayed in Scotland. Even if that maybe would have given me more game time or more visibility, I definitely knew that I was a better player having gone out. So I was happy in Italy, and it didn't really try and get me down that much that maybe you're not seen as much because you're out there. But I was loving football, so there was no really too thought about it.
The opening game of that tournament was pretty dismal. You came on at half-time when we were already 3-0 down to England and ended up losing 6-0. How did it feel, the result aside, getting onto the pitch at a major tournament?
Unbelievable. It's hard to put into words sometimes. I just remember I never expected to be put on at half-time, but then obviously Jane got injured, so I kind of just got chucked on. I I just knew that I had to bring energy. Like, we're obviously 3-0 down already. You're at a major tournament. Like, we just need to show our passion, show why we're Scottish, and show that we deserve to be here. So I think I ran for my absolute life. I just wanted to bring as much energy as I could to the park, and I hope I did that. But
and
yeah,
you featured in the other two games. So we lost 2-1 at Portugal, and then we beat Spain 1-0. So Scotland's first win at a major tournament in God knows how many years. So since the Euros in '96 when Ali McCoy scored against Switzerland. Does that experience, so I think this is relating back to the men's team, to be honest, as well. Did that experience kind of make everyone within that camp even hungrier?
Yeah, I think seeing, because obviously the Euros compared to the World Cup is so much it's on a smaller level. So to know that how much that pushed women's football in Scotland and how much want and desire we had to be there, we wanted to be there again, it was massive. So I think as a collective group, we come together and we say, like, the next quality, like, we want this, like, we have to be there. We want to better ourselves, and we want to keep pushing Scotland and put them on the map. So
yeah, and then obviously Anna Segal stepped aside and Shelley Kerr took over. Did much change from turning up at the international breaks under Shelley Kerr's team from Anna Segal? I guess one of the things from yourself, I would say, that's maybe hindered you a little bit, not just being away for Italy. I know you've had injuries on and off, but do you think it's the playing one up top that kind of kills you as well? Because I've seen you say previously that you had a really good partnership anytime you played up top as a 2 with Jane Ross, and then you've maybe been unlucky when it's switched to a 4-2-3-1 and Erin Cuthbert's broken through and we've got goal scoring midfielders like Kim Little. Do you think it's just so many people available in a good Scotland side for one position?
I think, obviously, on a personal note, you want to be playing football, so when you're not playing, you're disappointed, no matter where you are. But that's what we want. This is what we've wanted for so long, to have so many options on a national level that, okay, if Erin Cuthbert's there playing before me, I'm supporting her because we want to win. If she's smashing it, I'm not bothered. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, on a personal, obviously, you want to be playing football. If you don't get game time, you're taking the huff anyway, no matter who you are. So obviously disappointed not to be playing as much, but at the end of I'm a team player. That's why I play football. So to know that the person in front of me is doing an absolute great job, then I'm their number one supporter because we want to be winning. So
yeah, and so Scotland qualified for World Cup 2019. I think this was the first tournament really that everyone had really kind of clambered around. The SFA, I could go on for days for the things they don't do right, in my opinion. But the one thing that I've seen consistently for about 5 years now is the promotion of the women's game is just ridiculous, and no more so than giving us a send-off against Jamaica at Hampden. So you've already said that you played in front of 39,000 that season. What was it like to get on and play at Hampden?
Unbelievable. Knowing it's a national team stadium, I know, like, when you're a kid, like, there's like the Coca-Cola tournaments and stuff, and you kind of get on the pitch and you're in and about there, but actually wearing that Scotland jersey and walking out on Hampden, it's just on another level, isn't it? Like, it's maybe something that we never knew that it could happen. Like, it was the men's stadium, like, we play in smaller stadiums, obviously with the capacity. So one, you know you're going to be there and you know there's going to be a crowd. So when that's all 18,000 or whatever it was that turned up, it was just unbelievable. It was a great send-off.
And Scotland won 3-2 and went off to the World Cup with high hopes, knowing that we had to play England in the opening game. I'm guessing I'm going to answer the question for you. I'm assuming you were hugely disappointed not to even get on the pitch against England.
Go back there, like, you're always disappointed as a football player. Do you know what I mean? You don't play to sit on a bench. We know England are one of the best teams in the world. So you know, no matter who she puts on the pitch, she's got to have the best out there. But we were all ready. Do you know what I mean? Even the girls sitting on the bench, there was class sitting on the bench, and unlucky enough not to play. And I think anybody you could have put on, they're as much as we hate to say it, they're England, but they're so many years ahead of Scotland and they're showing it now. So we just need to keep working on ourselves and trying to be better and push the league so that it can get better, so that the youth coming through can be better, so that sooner rather than later then we'll smash them.
Yeah, I'm a wee bit curious. Rachel Corsey seemed very, very dismissive of this, and I was amazed. One of the things that happened in the build-up to that World Cup was the FIFA game actually done a massive update so that the whole World Cup was included for the Women's World Cup, and all the women's teams are in it now. Are you made aware of that, and is that not something that's really brought to your attention?
Not brought to my attention at all.
Have you never? So you've never played FIFA as Lana Clelland?
Never.
Oh, you're missing out, man. You're missing out. You would be. What rating out of 99 would you expect a Lana Clelland to be placed in FIFA?
Depends what it's going off of.
I mean, it's varied on all ability. You are one of the higher rated players in the game.
Why have I not been playing this?
I honestly, I was so surprised that Rachel Corsie wasn't even bothered. I was like, this. I have put myself in FIFA in every game I've ever had just to play it, and you happen to be in it, and you don't seem to care.
To be fair, I'm not a FIFA player. Like, I've got a PlayStation, but when it's last been turned on, I couldn't even tell you, honestly.
Well, you're a 76 out of 99, which is one of our highest rated players.
Really?
Yeah, you should be playing it, at least enjoying the Scotland. So the England game's been and gone. Now we'll go on to got to be one of the Scotland highlights of your career. The Japan game, so we're 2-0 down, told to go warm up. You know you're coming on. We need to get something out of this game. The ball drops to you, I think maybe 25 yards out. And I'm right in saying it's on your weaker foot, yeah?
Yep.
What's going through your head where you decide, is it just, look, we're 2-0 down, nothing else is happening?
And it's not just the Scotland highlight of my career, I think it's probably one of the highlights of my career. No, like, joking aside, I've been put on, I've been told, just give it everything. Like, there's not long left, just give it everything you've got. And the ball drops to me and I've just hit it. It's just come across me and I just thought, do you know what? Why not? Like, we're 2-0 down. We need something out of this game. Just hit it. And I think you can tell from my facial expression after, like, but maybe taking that in, like, obviously disappointed not to get in the England game, disappointed maybe not to get on earlier. So maybe that anger within me, I'm just like, nah, I'm hitting this. So look, it went in.
Yeah. I have no experience playing beyond amateur football, but there are sometimes you'll hit a strike, and the minute it's almost cliche when you say this, the minute it hits your foot, you know where it's hitting, you know it's in. I mean, most mine I know it's going in a stand somewhere. you know instantly where it's going. Did you have that moment? Because the ball's pretty straight into the top corner for the minute.
I mean, give it another 9 times and it's definitely hitting the stand. No, joking aside, like, exactly. I think you can tell from my body reaction as well. Like, I've not even watched it going in. I've just turned around because it was already in.
And then from there, I mean, actually, see, that's a good point. So you've not. I don't think you've played 26 games for Scotland, but I believe you've only started 5. So a 4-goal return's decent. I've not seen the Serbia goal, but I would say the 3 Scotland goals I've seen of yours are 3 of the best if you can single them out. Your goal against Hungary is a wee outside the right foot, maybe 6 yards out. Your goal against Iceland's right in the top corner with your right foot on the left side. And then that goal, it's almost like a Matt Letizia of DVDs if you go back and watch some of his goals. Is it? Can you just put forward that in club football it's quality and quantity, but just at Scotland you're just putting out quality there?
No comment.
You've scored that goal. Erin Cuthbert was really unlucky about 2 minutes later as well that could have brought us back level. How did we go back to reverting to the same side in the Argentina game? So I guess it's a really difficult question because 60 minutes in, nobody's questioning Shelley Kerr's decision to go back to the original starting 11. What's it like watching that Argentina game unfold? Because I know what it was like for us personally. We missed the first 50 minutes and I got home and turned it on just in time for the first goal going in for Argentina. You're a striker on the bench. I spoke to Fiona Brown, who did come on as an attacker later in that game. Do you even want on at that point? Or you try to get another goalie warmed up and get 2 keepers in the net?
God, every emotion under the sun on that bench. Obviously, you're like 3-0 up. You're like, girls, we've done it. Like, this is it. And then literally 5 minutes later, your head's in your hands and you don't even have a clue what's just happened. It's like I was watching a film on the bench. I can't even describe anything that went on. Like, I think to start with, it was a blur. It was like, what just happened? And then obviously with all the chaos at the end, she blew the final whistle, but there was still so much time that should have been played, and we're just like, well, what? Like, we didn't even know what was happening. Like it was just so surreal. Like football gives you so many emotions, like hello, and it can literally happen in 10 minutes that I think we can only learn from it and take it forward and try and build on that.
Yeah, I think unfortunately Scotland seems to be one of the only nations that seems to get the highs and lows all in like one go. Like we never really get to live the highs too much, and it's like, there you go. Because we only needed to win by one goal to get through as one of the best third place teams, I believe. But you're still just turned 27, so you've probably still got 2 Euros and 2 World Cups. If everything goes well and the advances in the women's game, so being professional, it will extend your career. What do you think the future holds for Scotland for yourself? Because I've heard you say previously, talking about Jamie Lee Napier and Amy Muir coming through. So there's already Erin Cuthbert, who's only bloody 21. Is it really just a keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing?
I think now with the last 2 qualifications, we've set a benchmark. Like now, Scotland is on that stage. Scotland has to be on that stage. So everybody has to play their part, whether that's young kids coming through, aspiring to be, whether it's people on the brink and just trying to get in the squad, whether it's constant people in the squad. Everybody has to do their bit to help grow this Scottish team, because we've experienced it and we don't want it to be the last. We want more people experiencing it, and we want it to be a normal. Like this is the norm. Scotland qualify for tournaments. Yeah. You can play on the world stage. You can play in the European Championships. I've experienced both of them, and honestly, they're experiences that nothing else in life can give you. If you want to be a football player, that has to be the thing to do, and the want and where you want to be. So everybody just needs to dig in, work hard, and get there, because it's unbelievable.
And I guess just on a club level, is the ambition just to win the title with Fiorentina, and there's no outlook further than that?
Yeah, exactly. I came here because I wanted to win trophies. Got my hands on one so far, so there's 2 missing. And once we've got our hands on those, we'll see where life takes us. But yeah, exactly. Just want to win.
Lana, thank you very much for joining us and doing this interview. I've really appreciated it.
No, thank you.
All right. I'll speak to you soon.
See ya.
Bye-bye. Scots Abroad is written and produced by John Walker and Gary Black.